So good evening. I'm Richard Waring, a member of the larger PoemWorks community, and in my probably 13th year hosting these monthly reading series. And it's good to be with you. We have two wonderful feature poets tonight and several open mic readers who will read one poem or one page of a poem, whichever comes first. Someone once said, an experience can enter us like a splinter. A poem can give us the opportunity to pull it out. Wisława Szymborska says, I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing poems. The English poet and journalist James Fenton says, the writing of a poem is like a child throwing stones into a mine shaft. You compose first, then you listen for the reverberations. And finally, Michael Ondaatje says in his novel, Warlight, you return to that earlier time armed with the present, and no matter how dark the world was, you do not leave it unlit. You take your adult self with you. It is not to be a reliving, but a re-witnessing, a re-witnessing. Well, I want to introduce Kenneth Lee, who is the author of 6 books of poetry. Sweet Spot came out in 2012, Lake Effect 2014, Self-Portrait in Hourglass 2015, Late Revelations 2017, Opening the Camp 2019, and now At the Amusement Park. He's published poems in Poetry East, Nimrod, The Lyric, Ibbotson Street, and other journals. Ken is a pathologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital, where he specializes in gynecological pathology. He lives in Boston and Vermont. Please welcome Ken.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. Can you hear me, everyone? Am I on?
You are good.
Huh? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So thank you very much for that introduction, Richard. And it's really a pleasure, obviously, to be here to read before Barbara's group. I got my start writing poetry with Barbara, at least in a serious way. I think it was like 17 years ago at her table in Brookline. And so this group is particularly appropriate. And I'm glad to read with Spencer as well and anxious to hear his poetry. I'm going to be reading from this book here. Let's see, can you see? It's called At the Amusement Park. And it can be purchased if you're interested at Harvard Bookstore through harvard.com. You go to on our shelves, and that book's printed here, and it's also on Amazon. So the book is kind of like an autobiography, vaguely, and I'll start with a poem about a place I lived when I was a boy. It's called East Patterson. The automobile, Route 4 and the baby boom gave birth out of junkyards, fields, and farms to the Elmwood Park apartments, identical, brick conjoined 2-story units arranged in 20 Army-style courtyards, themselves conjoined, on a 40-acre sprawl. This is where we moved when I was 8. I hated it. It tore me from my friends, but hard to sustain when there's a stickball game in the parking lot adjacent to our court. Bases etched with chalk, garages as a backstop, macadam filled with chattering new faces. Mary, Coochie, Howie, Carol Lou, a brand new cast, my childhood, Act 2. With a pink rubber ball and a broomstick, got the action going. And so, stage left, in earnest innocence, I entered into that hard scrabble, kid-infested place. Now for a little teenage angst, heart sounds. Bad news, she's gone. My very first girlfriend. I hang up, 40 years come off the clock. Those teasing quips, those first tried lips are back. I'm air, I'm 2 feet off the ground again. That boy again, bedazzled by her art, those spinning spells from spring, that's all it was. By summer she was gone. Since then, this buzz, a small electric fence around the heart. I didn't put it in my biography, but after I graduated from college, I joined the Air Force, and I was a pilot in the Air Force for 5 years. And this is kind of about that experience. In a war, after all, Toul-Rosières Air Base, France, 1966. Lying on the barracks bunk, my orders cut, anxiety competing with relief. LBJ is playing chess with Brezhnev, entire squadron shipping to Saigon. I always sensed someday my time would come. The buzz of war was static in my background. Our children's games, the Germans, the Japs, VE Day, my father on our front steps, banging a big soup ladle on a pot. 51, I saw MacArthur at the Polo Grounds, behind the Giants' dugout, wild cheering. 61, Kennedy and Khrushchev, Cuban missiles pointed on their pads. But the one they saved for me was Vietnam, rolling in an RF-4C cockpit across the steamy tarmac of Tan Son Nhut at dusk. Now from that year, to me, 3 things remain. Those tracers zipping past like metal rain. On the wall in Washington, 6 names. A single photo, flight suit, insouciant smile, posed beside my plane. I like to write about art. This is called the Institute of Contemporary Art. The glories of the Quattrocento rested on the fear of God, but rather than sacrifice a ram or immolate a virgin, Bellini mollified his vengeful pride by painting his son, his mother, his saints, over and over, praying with his paint. Could he visit the ICA, he would be stunned. People stroking beards and rubbing chins before a pile of stacked up slabs of felt. A stuffed rabbit roped to a stick, a row of breast-like pillows on a wall, and nobody doing Madonnas anymore. And I beside him could not explain how the centuries had rearranged our neurons, how beauty became the duty of the viewer, how I could proclaim the glory of his San Zaccaria altarpiece by the same brain that's absorbed by a burn hole in a hanging square of burlap. As Richard said, I'm a pathologist. This is called tissue pathologist. In medical school, I learned what I was not a pusher of pills, not a fixer of fractures, not a holder of hands, but the new world I discovered down the tubes of a microscope revealed to me that I was made for looking. The nucleus blue, the cytoplasm pink. Look at them and think, that's what I do. What are those cells with all the purple blobs? What portent the round ones in gray ground, the coarseness in the center of the long ones? spin truth from light while turning little knobs. Mesonephric carcinoma. In the lemon wedge they sliced out from the bulbous swelling on her cervix, unconfronted by a mob of misfits. Vestigial male glands from the mesonephric duct, nested deep in its muscular stroma, have set out to invade it. How multi-faced, mysterious is cancer. Lung, brain, bone, skin, every tissue is sprinkled with the seeds of its own destruction. But this one's especially ironic. Cast aside by Sheila's embryo as unnecessary, functionless junk, they brooded, begrudged for 35 years, then struck out one morning to kill her. Stephen Hawking, 1942 to 2018. He measured out the universe and time inside the 3-pound vastness of his mind. Black holes, most miserly of the phenomena, there Stephen did his stalking. Far, far beyond our puny track, he journeyed in his abstract chariot, in search not just how everything all fits, but question of all questions. How is it that it is? He came so close that God could not refrain from snatching him. Finally, someone he could talk to. We have a camp up in Vermont, and it's called Star Farm. This one is called Horses to Star Farm. Everyone's so glad they're here again. 4 brown and chestnut stoics grace our pasture, between the barn and fence, grazing as I pass. The closest raises up his massive head. He looks at me through bottomless black eyes, holding for a second onto mine. I feel a thrilling moment of communion, but I know since we were kin, we've come so far, his mind from mine, the distance to a star. "60. Adults comprise 2 kinds, those younger than 60, those older. In your sleep the night before your birthday, you cross over. When you awaken, you feel it. A blanket on your knees, appropriate. Your pecs, you note, are sagging fast. Your mind, the Rubicon behind, henceforth with time will haggle to retain the names, Janice and Jean, just learned, and your hand, your straight up dry martini in its glass." One of my favorite artists is Richard Diebenkorn. I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he's an abstract artist. And this is called "And Then I Discovered Diebenkorn." At the MoMA, grazing among a field of newly hung abstractions, I'm stopped by one that looks like it was painted over South Dakota at 30,000 feet. My brain clicks into reconnaissance mode, surveys his Midwest plain geometries, a square of smudgy blue, fenced off by a frayed gray line from a velvet tawny one. Across them both, a deep-dyed green diagonal tugs me toward the top, a knot of intricate triangular arrangements. I try to decipher them, dive in and out, hover, circle back, dive down again. A yellow-purple Diebenkorn black hole. Borderline. Left-sided mass, 11 centimeters, cystic and solid by ultrasound, explains her intermittent pelvic pain. My pager beeps. They want a frozen section. I hustle down, meet it as it's shuttled in from the OR, like an order from the kitchen. We plop it on our cutting board, still warm. Fluctuant, smooth and slippery, we slice it. It gushes a pale yellow fluid, flops open, exposing its cavernous interior. Papillary fronds, like stalagmites, no, seaweed. We pick the most suspicious part and freeze it. The slide, complex, ambiguous. The nuclei pale, slightly smaller than cancer. I intercom it in, a borderline tumor. 60 years of scientific study stand behind my wishy-washy call, which says, while not quite malignant, someday this might kill her, and one might also pop up on the right. Shit, the unspoken response. She's 29. If 50, we would take the other side. But hers? How many adorable orphans wait in line? Egyptian tour. It's the last trip we took before the COVID came around. 19 of us entrust our well-versed guide, our sturdy bus, its driver and its guard, for context, rest stops, and safety, while we tour the tombs and temples of the Nile. Like children on a black night under stars, at Giza, Luxor, Abu Simbel, we gaze up at their pyramids, gigantic statues. How fathomless and far from us they are. Survivors of civilization's first rise, surprising the planet 50 centuries ago. Where do we come from? Where do we go? Through Horus and Isis to Ra with our wives. Back into the sprawl and smog of Cairo, punctured by 1,000 minarets and glass hotels, apartments for a pharaoh, where we disperse to rest and seek perspective. Unique, this fertile strip, the Nile's gift, time, death, dust, burials with donkeys, cakes, and dogs. A weft of even Egypt woven into us, shuttles eastward all our Western gods. Two more poems. This one's called Going Through the Motions. So lucky to have lived so long, experienced so much, love and sex, loops in a jet, Van Gogh's room, the Tetons lit by dawn. Now age has come, and everything I do is done to its relentless, muffled drum, which makes them seem not as they used to be, as pleasantries, adventures, material for memories, but like going through the motions, a strutting, fitful march through time left over. It ought to be the sweetest part of life. It is. Can jog 3 miles with only 2+ pain, a loving wife, a monthly check, a feeling for the finer things. So much. It's sinful to complain. It's just this frame of mind, hard to explain. This is the last one. It's called Story Time. We were already living happily ever after when we learned there was a wolf, a witch, a troll. But we knew that these were only fairy tales, so we played outside beneath clean-shaven skies. When was it we started to die? Richie Jones's colon carcinoma? But that was 30 years ago. Our parents' generation was doing the dying then. An email from my sister, back page of my senior yearbook. A kid then, just a freshman, smiling 3rd row in the bleachers. Now this guy has grown a long white beard. I read to my granddaughter, the story of that spunky little train. And she turns into my daughter, then I into my father, telling me all about how it made it over to the other side of the mountain. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was really wonderful. Really enjoyed it. Our next feature poet is Spencer Thurlow, who's currently the Poet Laureate of West Tisbury, Massachusetts, where he leads community readings, workshops, and more. His poetry or translations have appeared in Granta, World Literature Today, Cincinnati Review, Comstock Review, Worcester Review, and others. With Eric Hyatt, Spencer co-translated Sonic Peace by Kiryu Minishita, Phoneme Media, 2017, which was shortlisted for the American Literary Translators Association's 2018 National Translation Award, as well as the Lucian Strike Prize for Asian Translation. Please welcome Spencer.
Thank you, Richard, for that introduction. And thank you for having me. It's so cool to be here reading in front of you guys. And just, you know, Ken, your poems were really powerful. Some really, really powerful medical poems in there. I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to read a few different, you know, contrary, I usually read my translations, which you heard about in the intro, but I'll be reading more of my own work tonight. So I'll begin with a longer poem, and then I'll end actually with a few poems by Barbara Helfgott Hyatt, who we all know, and I'll explain that a little bit when we get there. The first poem is a little bit long, and the one thing you should know about it is that it is all in tanka form, so everything is the same line, and you'll see everything is the same amount of syllables, so you'll see what I mean. One of those people. Summer collects in big drops of September sweat, concentrated and heavy, but not everywhere, like it was in mid-August. You haven't changed at all in 6 years. Black kerchief, black jeans, classic leather jacket, black cowboy boots, and yellow cowboy straw hat. Chatting up the cute trumpet player from out of town before you break us down with your rendition of House of the Rising Sun. Talking with that brilliant guy who hunted groceries in the supermarket with a bow, I close my eyes and see the arrow. I hear you tell the story about the naked party where you opened the door on drugs, naked and paint covered, to the cops. Heavy metal through strip oak flooring smudged with bicycle grease in the triple-decker living room that doubles as 2 bedrooms. The first time I meet you alone in a cafe, we talk about how we met a long time ago, but only really said hi. Arm over a stiff, white, painted chair. After dinner, black coffee and the Boston skyline beyond the screened-in open window. Home-cooked breakfast on your balcony where you have a pitcher reserved for orange juice and I ignore the puffs of cold fall air. Discovering expired peaches in your downtown apartment kitchenette, the sound of them plunking in the empty trash can. Giant Buddha over your doorway, 6 paintings your ex-roommate gave you of headless bodies that are still in your closet. The nature and power of water when it is flowing backwards from the street, up out of the toilet in the upstairs bathroom. Watching the video from when you dragged a fetid moose skull through Alston on a laptop next to the real, sanitized moose skull. Expired avocados on the supermarket loading dock, that we take home at midnight like prohibition rum runners. You touch your elbow to your knee and scratch your chin like you've had an idea between the first and second glass of Prosecco. 1930s bluegrass on a record player floating down from your bedroom as I open the front door with my brand new key. First time at the corner superette saying, I live here now, to the counter guy via eye contact while buying detergent. Homemade kale soup dinner under a triptych titled Hustler Genitalia Collage that is waiting for your curation. Feeling downright cozy on an ice-covered porch with coffee and a gentle future that could easily swaddle me to sleep. When you say things like, my friend is sleeping with the editor of the newspaper, so we can play that card anytime we want. You say, remember when I was just a taxi driver and you were a hitchhiker, like we both knew neither would remain true. Your vague nudge under the covers after you tell me again about the naked party, how people were more honest back then. Parked outside the city while you argue with your parents on the phone and I focus on the shriveled bag, the shriveled apple cores at my feet. Intellectualization at your inaugural opening while you share watery beer with the chairman of the board. Recording a Murin Her performance and also your cover of old-fashioned morphine, which I'll always skip over later. In every group photo, my thin department store dress shirt is more the color of I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Watching the community pay respects like college boys elbowing their chairs back into place after dinner at Chipotle. The last sleety afternoon or sunny morning, you dropped me at the bridge downtown with, you can make it to your new place from here. Understanding we are dogs' best friends when I'm making sunny eggs and my new roommate's lovely doggo looks at me and goes, awoo. Winter is ending when you introduce me as your former coworker when I run into you and your dad in Harvard Square. Finding what must be myself in your commemorative mural painted on a nearby building slated for demolition. So that was all one poem. Next, I'll be reading 3 poems of a new series I'm starting, which is about high school, or my high school teachers. Maybe some of you heard this first one before. It's actually pretty old. In the in-between. I like your haircut, words spoken to me in Spanish class in English, sitting in the last row against the wall by Miss Rodriguez, who always tells me I'm smarter than I look, which I am. In math class, I braid Lauren Pollock's hair, our teacher missing a chunk of his skull that looks like Nevada. It gives him memory loss, I think. I'll take the bathroom pass, a clipboard, clap its clapper down the hall, see what kind of voice it has. I sit on tabletops in culinary waiting. Megan Gannon says, the oven clock has taken way too long to change. I say it only takes a minute and everybody laughs. At a pre-graduation service, I get an attendance pin to wear. I never once did not show up. Health class. Miss Gold in short shorts, windbreaker, gold ponytail, holds a glass anatomical vagina in her hand. This one's vintage, type L, back before they started with the plastic versions. But anyway, the point here is how hard it was even to talk about sex when I was your age. I mean, I almost lost my job fighting with the school, fighting to get condoms in the nurse's office. I mean, geez. Our giggles sweep into a wave we can't control. My part in the war, she chuckles with us, tossing the vagina into a supply box just before the bell. Honors American literature. Before she began the lesson, Ross asked her where that scar was from. College. While I was jogging one evening, an escapee came out of the woods, raped and shot me as he was leaving. Raped works through our dull classroom like acid until our minds beg everything to return to normal. The bullet left a star-shaped hole exiting my jaw, as you can see, she finishes, picking up our assigned reading, pausing to ask if there's anything else we want to know. And now I'm going to read 3 poems. So as poet laureate, I'm required to read, open the town meeting with a poem. So you are going to hear those poems. I've done this 3 times now. So just picture a town full of angry people about to debate whether or not they should budget $10,000 for some tires or something. Okay. Old Mill Road. Dad and I find the trough cutting through a huckleberry sea. Our footfalls punch past oak leaves into dirt that someone cared about enough to label ancient way. I can't imagine who'd take the trouble. I'm 9, nearly 10. Starting home, I wonder if our driveway will one day become history. That was 2018. This is no, that was 2019. This is 2020. A few hours past sunset. I'm halfway through a walk in the brush-cut field between wiry cedars and a line of cold farm tools, inky shadows, brittle wind. My farmhouse with running water, food, loved ones, all my stuff safely tucked away. The sky lit up like a theater screen pregnant with movie, ready to show the world as endless and full of meaning as time will afford. The old I never chose where I was from, still in me, rattling out a lesson I can finally turn my back on. And this is the one I will be reading next month. Cedar tree neck. Pale sunlight strikes sedge over cliff. Inner pond path, the same gateway to fiction it was when I first saw it. Land of locusts swooped in the lee, waves that also break on some far off shore. Now I struggle with how my heart too looks exactly the same. In the meantime, it learned, unlearned, it is what it is. The ocean has never stopped, not even once. And someone has built a steel fence around the inner pond path. Above the tide line, stacks of smooth stones lie on a driftwood plank ready to be washed away in the next storm. There's space enough for another tower, but I leave it for those in need. All right, well, I'm going to read 4 poems by Barbara Helfgott Hyatt. Some of you may know she had a, thanks Richard. As some of you may know, she had a manuscript that Alexis, who is here, I think, worked very diligently over the past several years with Barbara, and these poems are amazing, and they begin in childhood and sort of resonate through her life. And I am lucky enough to have a copy of this manuscript, and you may have seen emails or something, and we're trying to get support, sort of get people on, set people on fire a little bit, so that when we get a publisher for this, and when it's out, we'll really be able to do this book everywhere. So anyway, these are 4 poems, just ones that I liked. They're not I don't know. They're in order though, so the first one comes first and the last ones come last. But there's quite a few poems in this book. Anyway, first one. Money. Franklin 5s, 10s, and 20s. I'd watch my father slap his earnings down, my mother calculating with pen on paper at our kitchen table, my father like a king counting out his money. On and on like that. What did it mean, I'd wonder, after, in bed, with the dark, the lights of the fancy hotels bearing down? Why go to work, so handsome, wear a felt fedora and brown belted gabardine coat? To carry a beat leather sample case, thin packs of cigarettes and cigars to sell to hotel owners, to share a cup of coffee in the leatherette booth, then bring that money home to marry a bonus. Mornings, frozen orange juice, poached eggs on toast already on the breakfast table. Where did all that money go? I had my own bonus piggy bank from Boardwalk, National Bank and Trust. I saved nothing because that pig had no slot. She's such a great poet. Okay, next. My brother's closet. I am sick with fear of the dark, the need to pee but won't get up fear of the dark. My white sheets cold with fear of dark sound, the sudden sharp turns in the hallway, the threshold to my brother's empty room, his closet open, clothes tossed on the bed, the ones not good enough for college. I walk into his nearly empty closet. I wrap myself in his leather jacket, pushed my hands through his cuffs, helped myself to his absence. I rummage his silky pockets, half a stick of gum, a folded letter, pink, rippling, maybe love, like a sonnet from the Portuguese. I sit on the edge of his maple bed, read under my breath, darling, feed me your dick, your dripping wet cock. Betrayed, me flushed in his jacket, wrapped in the arms of my brother, gone off to college, his leathery smell, my own dark need, the senseless, sexless pull of blood. And now for something a little different. Concerning slugs. 2 slugs have mistakenly dragged themselves to my doorstep. I find them writhing naked there, scoop them up in my backyard, shovel, carry them across to the road, to the field, trees bending to the keel of the sun, pears swollen, resistant, self-deluded, past satisfying on the branch. I want to save the slugs, deliver them to their new damp hiding, slide them off the shovel to the ground. They do not move. Have I hurt them? Have I torn them from their just hatched young left sleeping under the latticed shadowed porch? Who will teach them what they need to feed on now? Who will teach them what to feed on now? Earth has a penchant for the not just yet, spinning the very start of things, giving up to certain orphans, slugs, for instance, what they need, as it did for me in my shameless, dark unfolding. And final poem for you guys from Barbara here is Walking Without an Umbrella in New York City. Don't worry, I say to the fallen man bleeding onto the subway stairs. You're okay, I say from the gutter of my throat. I kneel beside him. We wait together for sirens in the rain. What's in the way, rain accommodates, grazes the gray of the man's mustache, lends to the city's sidewalk panache. Ceaseless rain runs. Don't worry, I say to the bride, sobbing, soaked under the plaza's soaking awning, the train of her gown lapping sludge, her groom beside her holding his wind-blown umbrella. He is broken, she is angry. Don't worry, I say to their worry. The first 25 years are the hardest. Thank you guys. Thank you, Richard. That was fun.
Wow, that was a double header. Really wonderful reading. Thank you so much, Spencer. You know, in the second poem that you read of Barbara's, she says something like, "Help myself to her absence," and that's what I'm doing when I hear her poems as they trickle through our reading series. So thank you so much for that. It's been, I have to say, a very gynecological evening. You know, both of you, really. And I really loved the poet laureate in you, giving those three poems and a preview of one that hasn't gone public yet. A real sense of place, and kind of reminds me that, you know, when we go outdoors, we also go in. So I really appreciated those. So now let's open the room to some other voices. And we have several. And I want to start out with Carrie Lohman.
Thank you. Thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Ken. That was really amazing, and it's the way I want to spend my Friday nights. So I have a very small poem I just wrote, and my husband has not seen this yet, so you're the first. Long marriage. When you touch me, I forget that I am old, that my skin wrinkles and rolls, and that age spots bloom on all my peninsulas. When you touch me, we're in our 20s again, lying hot below clay cliffs of Aquina, flagrant, undeterred.
Thank you. Wonderful. Next up, we have Rick Ribstein.
Thank you for all the poetry so far. So much fun to do this, Richard. Thank you. Rare sightings of children. One slept till 3, the other had her door closed. Suddenly, they are in the kitchen, concerned with food and talking. I run for my wife. This is not to be missed. It will last about 10 minutes. For days, it is as if we have had fresh cut flowers, and our countertops are covered with petals that we leave till they've shrunk and lost their color.
Thank you. Very nice. Next up, we have Alexis Ivy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for everyone who read. It was beautiful. This is my first time reading the first erasure poem I've ever written. A Plan on a Map, taken by Blanche Barrow's memoir, My Life with Bonnie and Clyde. Dark wasn't afraid of darkness. We began having one flat tire after another. There's only one story true. I am faithful to the wrong road. I am blind to straight and narrow. I prove it. Once, just for fun, I lost all track of time. The ride, worse, we always felt the wound. Our names, headlines. I was almost always from everything, away and back soon, hidden someplace, the only light we had. Clyde said, pull robberies, leave in a hurry, nothing to cause suspicion, no harm in promise. I play solitaire, seem too dumb, sit beside good luck, showing me I won. Thank you.
Wow, there doesn't seem to be anything erased from that. Fabulous. Well, next up we have another poetry curator who has the night off, and I'm very happy to have him join us. Timothy Gager.
I'm really happy that your event is happening when I do have a night off from my series. I'm going to read one, Dinner Party. The kitchen's hoard sits or stands configured as serpentine shapes. Stove sends warmth seem as steam willows, while the host suggests her stirring spoon to strange lips, sipping their hallowed hellos with the goodbyes forbidding to each one waiting to present the creation. Folded in as a fabric, the downing of drinks welcomed reverie. The bar ever as close is the countertop. The clientele astrew on stools. Conclusive consensus quoted in chorus, this is where folks congregate. But just in case the hullabaloo has hastened to hold up for dinner, never mind, her dog nuzzles and noses in, nothing but contentment. The pet therapeutically weaves within a colliding kaleidoscope of limbs, like two figure skaters gliding forth in beguiling figures of eight.
Language of music, a musical language. Wonderful. Thank you. Next up, we have Margot Wazansky.
Hi, everyone. And thank you to Spencer and to Ken for beautiful reading. I am going to read a palindrome. And if you, I'm sure you all know what a word, what a palindrome is, reads the same backwards and forwards. And so does the poem. So you'll recognize the repeated lines. Palindrome on my 80th birthday. More of me to love, you say, as if I were the freshest bloom, though I'm weary of thickening, sagging, my hair going white. I cook, you clean, our rhythm an old standard. You dye my roots with diligence, do anything I ask, just to raise my spirits, just to keep me alive. I'm in the elder brigade, holding fast to time. Whiskey, wine, and cocktails make me ill. So I celebrate my best, run my engine hard, yoga my joints, surround myself with daffodils, brush gold on my hair for a little glow. I brush gold on my hair for a little glow, yoga my joints, surround myself with daffodils. I'm celebrating my best, running my engine hard. Whiskey, wine, and cocktails make me ill. I'm in the elder brigade, holding fast to time. Just to raise my spirits, just to keep me alive, you dye my roots with diligence, do anything I ask. I cook, you clean, our rhythm an old standard. I'm weary of my hair going white, sagging and thickening. More of me to love, you say, as if I were the freshest bloom. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margot. When you said I cook, I just finished watching Breaking Bad, and I just, for a moment, I thought there was something about you I didn't know, but I get it now. Well, I want to close out this wonderful evening of words with a poem of my own. You may know that Ken Burns is doing a film, I think it's showing on tonight, of Ernest Hemingway. And he's been a interesting puzzle to me for many years. And this toxic masculinity and so forth. So I wrote this poem a couple of years ago. Ernest Hemingway. Everyone knew my mother dressed me as a girl until I was boy enough to notice. None of my characters are shell-shocked. They're broken by bravery. Writing is easy. All you have to do is sit down at the typewriter and bleed. I always had a truly sensitive capacity, but I was shy of myself and began to develop as a shield, brutality. I drank, I smoked, I boxed, I went to bullfights. Sometimes I mistook my sensitivity for weakness, violence for power. I misused power for strength. In the end, little by little, me and my friends never saw each other again. So let's all unmute and share our joy and our appreciation for all the poets that read tonight.
How do I?
And we have a little time before I stop recording to just convey any sentiment that anyone wishes to anyone who's here. So,
Hi, Ken. Good to see you.
you know, Ken, I was curious about the painting behind you. You mentioned various artworks, and what is it that you've got behind you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's a painting by Richard Sattler, Paul Sattler. Sorry, was a Boston painter, and we bought several of his paintings. We were just blown away by them back when we were buying paintings to decorate our house. And this is the marriage of Thetis and Peleus, and it's kind of an allegory, and it's really cool. And I think the reason I liked it and bought it first off was because of that scrotum hanging down from the guy. Where is it? Can you see it? I don't know.
It's a little tough.
There's a satyr in there. He's bending over and he's got this scrotum hanging down between his legs. Wow.
Really ballsy of the artist.
By Paul Sattler. You don't want to show that. Can we see it? No, I don't know. I'm not going to try it. It's across the room, and it's all right. It's a huge painting, but anyway.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
We're all sort of deer-like in the headlights. That's very cute. Well, you know, it's been quite a year, and you know, poetry has been getting us through. Sometimes, you know, you have a choice. Do I want to eat? Do I want to read a poem? Sometimes you're better off reading the poem. Am I right?
Right.
So thank you for sharing your evening with poetry, and have a wonderful time getting vaccinated and beginning to reach out to one another in various safe and interesting ways.